Joining me now is Hill editor-in-chief Bob Cusack, Heat Street political editor Jillian Melcher, and GOP strategist Ford O'Connell. Thanks to all three of us for joining us. Jillian, I'll start with you. So what did you make of the meeting today, and do you think that they made as much progress as it seemed?
Sure. I think the ceasefire in and of itself is not necessarily an accomplishment, because we have to look at what Putin has done in the past. We've had ceasefires in February 2016, one in September 2016.
Sure.
In both of those incidents, Russia broke the ceasefire. But I was encouraged to see Trump's statements this week to Central European leaders saying the United States has energy. Come to us if you want it. I think that's throwing it at Trump, or at Putin. Trump throwing it at Putin, saying, you know, I'm a tough one to reckon with. So I actually thought that had more significance.
Bob, I mean, that's a great point. It was a big piece of his speech in Poland. He talked about you aren't going to be held hostage to just one energy provider. And that's not just talk. We've seen him actually act on it. I mean, energy independence makes sense, you know, both here in terms of getting manufacturing jobs back home, but also in this battle with Russia.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, Trump, I think, had to raise the meddling issue. Otherwise, he would have looked weak. The Wall Street Journal who has been critical of Trump at times, loved his Poland speech. And this is, I think, consistent with his America First. Whether you like it or not, he's not going to do the same trade or energy policies of his predecessor, and that has shaken up Washington.
Yeah. Ford, what did you think of what you saw today in that meeting between President Putin and President Trump? They tried to find common ground on some things, it seems. Going forward, that's going to be a tough one in Syria.
Well, let's be honest, Russia's never going to be part of the Brotherhood of Nations. But if you're going to get some concrete foreign policy outcomes, you're going to have these two folks spend a lot of time together. And the fact that they were able to get a ceasefire in southwest Syria is a good thing. Look, with respect to Syria, we know where the real problem is going to come, and that's once ISIS is driven out, and how we can divide that country up, and whether or not the Assad family is going to be the ones in power. Look, I think this is a good start. We know that Putin's a bad guy. Trump's got to do what he's got to do, only because the last two administrations have failed so badly with Russia. So good start. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Jillian, I mean, when you look at the situation in Syria, the more you peel the onion, the bigger problem it becomes. Maybe we're on the same side with Russia in terms of ISIS, but then even as soon as ISIS is gone, I mean, they're only using Assad to be in the area. They want the oil. They're aligned with Iran. We're on the opposite side of that, whether it's Israel or even Saudi Arabia. I mean, we don't have a lot of common ground beyond that. How do we deal with that with Putin?
I mean, that is absolutely where our interests diverge. And I think part of what Putin's doing here is using Syria to, first of all, test Trump, but second of all, to see if he can get concessions there made on the sanctions in Ukraine. So I think that's the other dynamic of it. A lot of it is testing. I mean, we've got to look at what Putin's doing elsewhere. 400,000, 500,000 troops doing a practice run, the biggest since 1991. That's scheduled for this September. So I think we have lots of different signals and events that are hinting that he's figuring out where Trump stands and how hard he can push.
So, Bob, then what is the best case scenario? I mean, what would be a Trump victory? Is it keeping Russia in check? Is it pushing them back, you know, off Ukraine? Like, what is it? What is a win?
I think a lot of a win is got to exhibit strength, and that's what these foreign policy maneuvers are. I mean, this meeting was supposed to be an hour or so, ended up being well over 2 hours. So, you know, Trump, whether he likes Putin or not, debatable. Does he respect Putin? Yes, but he does have to keep him in check, and that's something that Obama didn't. And also, remember, in that speech yesterday, he mentioned Ukraine. So that was a direct shot at Russia.
To Bob's point, you have to understand how Putin sees himself. He literally sees himself as Peter the Great, and his sole job is to reassemble the old Soviet empire.
For sure.
And obviously, look, when you have oil and you have military weapons, this is what Putin's going to try to do, is push out. So I do think you have to operate from a position of strength and try to keep him in check, because you have to understand something about Putin. He always wants more, and that's what Trump has to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I want to switch gears for a second, because the Financial Times is reporting that the EU is threatening a trade war against the U.S. if President Trump imposes tariffs on steel. Jillian, this is an interesting point, because, I mean, he's against steel dumping, as he calls it. Although in a lot of ways it benefits a lot of Americans. You get cheaper goods as a result. I know it's bad for steel workers, and that has been a big point of his campaign. But pile a trade war on top, he may not be on the right side of this issue.
Yeah, these are not great economic consequences that we have teeing up. So I think a trade war would be disastrous, in part because it would really hurt those lower to middle class American families. They're going to end up paying more for their commodities. But like you said, we've got to look at the ripple effect. American steel is already so much more expensive than other steel. That's going to hurt not just the steel industry, but all of the industries indirectly affected by steel.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a lot of economic shrinkage here.
Yeah. Bob, what do you think?
I mean, I think that on the campaign trail, all candidates talk tough on trade. But Trump is definitely continuing it now as president. I think this one could really backfire on him as far as prices that consumers pay. And then this is obviously a direct shot at China, but other nations like Japan could get hurt. So I think this is him talking. I'm not sure he's going to quite pull the trigger on this.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, I got a little bit of an issue there. I do agree with both of you that it involves terrible economic consequences for the U.S. But remember what Donald Trump did. He made this promise because he was looking to prop up Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And these are the very blue-collar voters in the working class that put him into the White House. This might not be the right move in terms of trying to boost their output, particularly with steel, but he has to find another way to make the upper Midwest economically viable for those people.
Okay, but Ford, I mean, it could be a negotiating ploy like everything else. I mean, when he was talking about launching a trade war with China during the campaign, I, for one, never really believed he was going to do that. I did think it was about trying to muscle North Korea and using that trade war possibility with China to get them in line to help with North Korea. Do you see another play in here? Is it part of a negotiation?
Well, I think that it is part of a negotiation. The only question is exactly what the end game is. Look, when Donald Trump came in here, he threw the kitchen sink up at the wall and said all old rules and the way we did things are over. So there may be a play in terms of helping the steel industry. There may be a play in terms of getting rid of the nuclear weapons in North Korea, because obviously the strategy we've had with North Korea over the last 25 years has been an absolute failure.
You know, when you throw the kitchen sink out the window like that, you may just end up with a broken sink, and I think that's the real risk here.
Someone would argue that the sink is already broken.
All of it. Yeah. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, you think about NAFTA. He talked tough on NAFTA, and then he said, I'm going to renegotiate NAFTA, as Obama did, but he really didn't. And now he's negotiating. So to Ford's point, I think a lot of this is a negotiation. He loves a negotiation. He wrote Art of the Deal. This is how he governs.
Yeah.
I'm going to be contrarian on this. I actually think that's been one of the things that he's been most consistent about, talking about protectionism, talking about trade policy, talking about trying to work it to the American advantage. I think to the extent that we've seen a policy that he's been coherent and consistent upon, this is it. And I think there's real potential for it to backfire.
There is, because, I mean, you're just going to end up making goods so much more expensive for everyone, including the people you're trying to help. I mean, he's trying to keep steel workers in a job, but at the same time, if the cars that they are buying and the homes that they are buying that have steel beads inside of them are that much more expensive, I don't know. I mean, this is like economics 101.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm taking him at his word on this. I don't think that he's being coy. I don't think this is a negotiating tool. I think this is something he genuinely believes. But if you look at how the U.S. has I guess, operated at an economic disadvantage every time we take this strategy.
Yeah.
I think history speaks pretty loudly about what to expect.
But Ford,
I agree with
go ahead.
Go ahead, Melissa.
No, I was going to say, it doesn't mean parity in terms of steel price. I mean, maybe it means we're just getting closer. He's accusing other countries, especially Canada, of dumping. I mean, maybe it just means that there's some middle ground here. Am I grasping at straws?
No, I think you're absolutely right. There's some middle ground here. I mean, like we're seeing with NAFTA. Look, we're not going to completely renegotiate NAFTA, but maybe we can change the source of origin rules such that it actually benefits American workers. I think that there is some wiggle room on the edges. The only question is how far is he willing to push it? And I disagree with Jillian a little bit. We always talk about trade, and a lot of us are pure economists in the sense that when we're trading among the global economy, that's a good thing. But we have to remember the people we leave behind, particularly in the industrial Midwest.
Yeah. All right, guys.